Tom Cruise is in the news again right now. He's all over the Olympic Games in Paris. He's been in the stands. He's been at the opening ceremonies. And it was just announced today, this is breaking news on TMZ Sports, that Tom Cruise is going to do an epic stunt to close the Paris Olympics, passing the flag to Los Angeles for 2028. And this story is actually pretty interesting. He's already filmed the ending of the stunt last March in Los Angeles, where he actually parachuted down to the Hollywood sign. And this is a photograph of him in March on the Hollywood sign. And they're going to actually have him rappel in the stadium in Paris at the closing ceremony on August 11th to get the Olympic flag. And then it's going to be edited together with this film piece where he actually flies it back to the United States. And then he actually parachutes down to the Hollywood sign and then hands off the flag to several athletes to run it into Los Angeles, which is the passing of the flag for the Olympics. He also was awarded recently an award by the French government, I guess for his humanitarian work or whatever. But what is missing is, of course, Tom Cruise's connection to Scientology. How did he get involved in Scientology in the first place? When did he meet David Miscavige, and how did that happen? Well, I happened to be there at the time. I worked for David Miscavige. My name is Mark Fisher, and I was in charge of Miscavige's office at the secret Scientology base at Gillham Hot Springs when Tom Cruise first was brought to the base and met David Miscavige. And I thought it would be apropos right now that people might be interested to know, how did Tom Cruise get involved with Scientology? How did he meet Miscavige? And how did this whole thing begin in the first place? Well, my co-host and I, Janis, Gillham, Grady, we did a video over a year ago, one of the first videos we did on our channel. And I thought it would be great to sort of replay it right now. It's only 36 minutes long, but I think if you're new to this and want to know how did Tom Cruise get involved with Scientology, this cult that's involved with all sorts of abuses, this would be a good time to replay that story. So without further ado, please watch our video about Tom Cruise. How did it all begin? This is Mark Fisher, and I'm here with my co-host, Janis Gillham Grady. How are you, Janis?
I'm good, thank you. Hello, everybody. Welcome to our channel.
We want to thank everybody for subscribing and watching our channel. We're trying to give you good content, things that you may not have heard before. And what we're going to talk about today is when Tom Cruise met David Miscavige. And it's not when Harry met Sally, okay? But I was there. I was working for David Miscavige at the time. I was there when Tom Cruise came up to the secret international base up at Gillham Hot Springs, and we're going to tell you those stories as well as how he initially got into Scientology and started getting processing. Right, Janis?
Yes.
Okay, great. Well, let's get going here. All right. So let me pull up the slide. Okay, who's that, Janis?
That is Mimi Rogers. Mimi was the daughter of Phil Spickler, a mission holder for Scientology. He's an old timer from the 1950s.
Here's my Phil. Parents. That's a picture of him there.
Yep. Phil knew my parents. And so Mimi, very similar to I, grew up in a mission. And she actually became a Class 8 auditor. So she trained all the way up as an auditor and enjoyed helping people. Yeah. I personally have never met Mimi, but I've known of Mimi since maybe I was 16 years old.
Right. Yeah. In 1977 or 78, my dad was doing the briefing course, the Scientology briefing course, which was the Class 6 auditor or processor training at the Flag Land Base in Clearwater. And Mimi was doing her Class 6 training at the same time at the Clearwater base. And she had to be like 20, 21 years old. She was very young.
Yeah. She was definitely a very dedicated Scientologist.
Right. And then she was married to a guy named Jim Rogers, right? And who was he?
Yeah, Jim Rogers was a manager for various celebrities. He even was the manager for Karen Black and arranged with Karen for Paul and I to get married at her house back in 1980. And Jim and Mimi worked a lot with an enhancement center. And
yeah, an enhancement center they were basically what you called in Scientology field auditors, meaning they were outside the organization, but they were delivering Scientology to get new public in. And they could charge for those services and make money, but then they also paid a percentage of that to Scientology. And then eventually the idea was that they would feed whoever it was they got into Scientology over to a more senior organization so that the person could continue to move up the Scientology bridge to total freedom, right?
Correct.
Okay, now this is Phil Spickler, and this was her father. And like you said, he actually was a mission holder, and he had one of the biggest missions on the West US, okay? We just ended recording. No, we're still rolling here. Okay, sorry about that. We're amateurs here, okay? We'll get more professional.
We're learning.
We're learning. Anyway, Phil had the Palo Alto, California mission, and it was a large mission, 100 staff, and it was bigger than most Scientology organizations. And he eventually got declared a suppressive person because in the early 80s, David Miscavige false reported information up to L. Ron Hubbard about the Scientology missions, that they were ripping off Scientology organizations in L. Ron Hubbard. Anyway, that's a long story to go into, but basically he declared several of these mission holders, and Phil Spickler was one of them. And when you're declared a suppressive person, you can no longer speak, or people that are still Scientologists can no longer speak to you or do anything business with you, and you can be treated with fair game. So that's what happened with Phil Spickler at the time. Okay.
Right. So
right.
because that happened, Mimi.
Right. Well, hold on. Mimi met. She and Jim Rogers got divorced, and then so she decided to become an actress, and she started doing actor training at Milton Katselas, was a famous acting school and a famous director, and he actually was a Scientologist, right? But he trained. He had a famous acting school. He trained lots of celebrities, Scientologists who became famous actors at his school. And Mimi decided she wanted to be an actress, and so she took classes at his school and started getting small roles on television shows and movies and that type of thing.
Correct.
And you know Milton, right?
Yes, I knew Milton, and actually L. Ron Hubbard is who introduced me to Milton, because Milton came to the ship and he said one of the things he had to do while he was there, he promised Yvonne that he would meet her daughters and say hello for her. So that's how I got introduced to Milton. But Milton was there on the ship with the Commodore, L. Ron Hubbard, and they worked together on Butterflies Are Free, which turned into a movie, and Milton arranged for us all to see it in one of the Lisbon theaters, and the Commodore went ashore and watched the movie. And so Milton was a very popular Scientologist.
Right. Now, this is a picture of a young Tom Cruise and a young Mimi Rogers. And, I don't know exactly how they. Can you hear me now?
Yes.
Okay, sorry about that. I don't know what happened. We had another technical difficulty. But what I was saying was that this is a picture of Tom and Mimi. And Mimi was the one who actually got Tom Cruise involved and interested in Scientology. Isn't that right?
Yes. She took Tom to the enhancement center where he got basic auditing, and they did word clearing on him to get him to understand words better and improve his literacy level.
Right, and this was like the mid 80s, okay? This is where the time period what we're talking about here.
Yeah.
Right. Okay, so anyway, so what happened is that Tom and Mimi ended up getting married, okay? and they had a relationship going, and he was getting more and more involved in Scientology through this enhancement center. Well, why don't you tell the story of how Scientology and David Miscavige, and how did they find out about Tom Cruise?
Yeah, well, what happened is at the Enhancement Center, Bill Yachty, who used to be Celebrity Center staff and was an auditor, he was now working at the Enhancement Center because he'd left the Sea Org. But he is the one who told another person who was helping at the Enhancement Center, who then told Greg Wilhare, who was the Inspector General, that Tom Cruise was being audited at the Enhancement Center. So Greg Wilhare then tells David Miscavige, and then all hell breaks loose for the Enhancement Center because suddenly they're being interfered with, and their public person who they'd been auditing and doing well with was taken away from them and taken under the wings of RTC.
Exactly. Now, from David Miscavige's point of view, okay, this is Greg Wilhare, okay, and we're not going to go over his history or whatever, but he's been a long-time Sea Org member, okay? He was on the flagship Apollo, and then eventually rose to the ranks of the Inspector General of the Religious Technology Center when David Miscavige took over the Religious Technology Center in 1987 and became the chairman of the board, okay? So Greg, finding out this information, he reports it to David Miscavige. Now, the Religious Technology Center had, as one of their functions was, enforcing the trademarks and copyrights to make sure that organizations were applying L. Ron Hubbard technology standardly. So they pulled up auditing processing folders from organizations all over the country and all over the world and reviewed them to see if there were any errors that were being made, and then they would get them corrected. So based on that, they decided, let's pull up Tom Cruise's processing folders up to the Religious Technology Center and let's review them, because Miscavige had no interest in celebrities before Tom Cruise, okay? He basically thought they were dilettantes. He thought they weren't dedicated. They weren't Sea Org members who were working around the clock or anything like that. He could care less. He didn't want to hobnob with them. He didn't have any interest in them whatsoever. But here was Tom Cruise, just off of Top Gun, one of the biggest movie stars in the world, and he's actually getting Scientology. I need to get my hooks into him, and we need to get him away from Mimi Rogers, because Mimi Rogers' father is Phil Spickler, who's a declared suppressive person who I personally made sure was declared. So we need to get him in because he could be a huge boom for Scientology. And that was the viewpoint that he had when he sent Greg Wilhare down to see Mimi and Tom in Los Angeles, and basically encourage Tom, invite him up to the base at Gillham Hot Springs to get personally audited, processed up there at the Gold Base, and to meet the head of Scientology, David Miscavige. Okay,
right.
So that's what happened with Greg. Right now, I was there the day and the night that David Miscavige was waiting for Tom Cruise to actually come up and see, what was going on in terms of introduce him, right? So Greg goes down to Los Angeles, and he's supposed to bring Tom up to the base by himself by 8 o'clock at night so they can have dinner together, David Miscavige and Tom, and he could be introduced to him, and he could be blown away by all of the movie studio stuff and the audio production and everything else that was going on at the Scientology base, okay? And, 8 o'clock came by, not here, no Greg. Hey, Mark, can you check down with the security booth and find out if Greg's come on the property yet? In those days, there were no cell phones. There was just a landline. There was nothing. There was no way to communicate, right? Nothing from Greg. 9 o'clock rolls around. DM is pacing back and forth between my office and his office, our offices were connected. Check down the security booth. Find out if he's here yet. Not there yet. 10:30.
Driving him nuts.
Driving him crazy. Finally, 11 o'clock rolls around. Oh, sir, he's just pulled into the base, security says. Great, fabulous, finally. I can finally meet Tom Cruise. Well, we get a phone call up from security saying, well, sir, to me, they're telling me this, Greg Wilhare has taken Tom Cruise over to his room where he's going to be sleeping, and that Tom is tired and actually said he will meet with David Miscavige tomorrow, the next day. Miscavige goes ballistic. He is so pissed off. He has Greg Wilhare come up to his office, and I was there, and he just lets Greg have it. What do you mean? Why were you late? Why didn't you bring him up here? What's going on? Yada, 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 right? And, you know, what's Greg supposed to do? I mean, Tom Cruise is barely a Scientologist, and what's he supposed to do? Order him to come up and see David Miscavige? I mean, that's just ridiculous. You know, that's not going to happen. So Dave got really pissed off that he didn't get to see him. His ego was hurt. All right.
Right.
All right. So here's what happened the next day. They actually had breakfast together and met. And then this is a picture.
Now, why do you have a shotgun there?
Okay. Well, that's not Tom Cruise or David Miscavige, right? But what happened is behind Bonneview, which was the house for L. Ron Hubbard at the Gillham Hot Springs property, L. Ron Hubbard had a shooting range that was made for him where he could actually shoot guns and rifles into the hillside, right? And also he had like a clay pigeon machine so that he could shoot with a shotgun. He could shoot skeet and trap. Okay?
Let me just say something here.
Yeah.
And the whole time I was with L. Ron Hubbard, he never once pulled out a gun and shot a gun or a rifle. We as crew used to go back there and take our shotguns and so forth and shoot. And then to call it Hubbard's is probably just an excuse by Miscavige on why he's using sealed money to improve the mountainside we used to shoot into.
Right. Well, anyway, what happened was I was up there at the, you know, it was just a pad. It was like a concrete pad with some trees around it and then some targets and up against the mountainside, right? It wasn't very fancy. So anyway, Miscavige drives up on his motorcycle with Tom Cruise on the back, and he's got his Yankees baseball cap pulled down low, you know, trying to be Mr. Incognito. And I got to meet Tom Cruise, shook his hand and that type of thing. Anyway, they went up there and they spent the afternoon shooting with shotguns, the clay pigeons, okay? Anyway, the apparatus that we had up there to shoot the clay pigeons was manually. I mean, basically had a string that you pulled. Whenever anybody said pull, somebody else would pull a string in order to shoot the skeet and trap up there. So Tom Cruise leaves the base, and he's due back in a couple of weeks. About 3 days before he actually arrives back at the base, he sends up a gift to David Miscavige, and it's an automated clay pigeon and skeet machine that actually would automate. You know, when somebody said pull, it would automatically shoot the pigeons out so that you could shoot them. Well, Miscavige goes full bore and uses the Rehabilitation Project Force, Scientology's slave labor and punishment unit. Works around, he has them work around the clock, and they completely redo the Bonneview shooting area. New pad, new furniture, regrade the whole place, and they build a bunker in the ground, an actual bunker with cinder blocks and concrete, where this automated machine can go in, so that what he wanted to impress Tom Cruise with the fact that he just sent him this machine, and lo and behold, here's this new setup for the shooting range, right?
Right.
So that was the first time of many times to follow that Miscavige would use Sea Org members as basically his slave labor force to do things to impress Tom Cruise. Okay, exactly. So that's what the shooting picture is about.
Okay.
All right. So at that time, it was 1990, all right? Tom Cruise was getting ready to shoot the movie Days of Thunder, which was the stock car racing movie. So in February of 1990, Miscavige and Greg Wilhare, they decided to fly to Daytona Beach, Florida, and meet Tom Cruise where he's doing research for his movie, and watch the race, the Daytona 500. When he returns to the Gold Base, he calls all of the the senior executives and the executives from RTC up to his office and puts a videotape on, okay, on the television set, right? And this is not David Miscavige or Tom Cruise, but this is a photograph showing what they were doing. He had a videotape showing him, David Miscavige, strapped to a skydiver, in a tandem skydive, and Tom Cruise doing the exact same thing. And they jumped out of a plane and were skydiving, and we were like blown away, like, oh my God, how could you do that? And it's like crazy. And of course, Miscavige was all proud, like his new buddy of the things that he was doing, right? So that's what happened during that. All right. As part of Days of Thunder, Tom Cruise needed a co-star. He's still married to Mimi Rogers, right? Well, he meets Nicole Kidman, who was an Australian actress. She was new. She'd done a movie called Dead Calm, and he cast her in his movie as his love interest in Days of Thunder, right? Well, sparks fly, but he's still married to Mimi Rogers, right? So before they start filming the movie, Tom Cruise asks his buddy, David Miscavige, saying, hey, I got a problem here. I like this girl, Nicole Kidman, but I'm married to Mimi. And basically Miscavige and Will Harris said, don't worry about it. We'll take care of it. All right. Now, Janis, please describe to everybody, what is the L. Ron Hubbard technology in regards to marriages, and why do marriages break up, and what was the handling that would be done in Scientology?
Yeah, in Scientology, it's believed that a couple breaks up because they've got secrets from each other. And that interferes with their communication together, and they start falling apart. So
things that they may have done to one another, right? Like have an affair or hide things or steal things. You know what I mean?
Or you go shopping and spend all the money instead of paying for the mortgage, and whatever.
And you don't tell your wife or your husband, right? Yeah.
Exactly. So you got all these secrets from each other, and the idea is to get a co-audit done where they sit down and they get these secrets off to each other. And then from there, rebuild their relationship, because they're no longer got those secrets keeping them apart.
Right. And what's the end product or end phenomena that the Scientology marriage co-audit is going after?
The end result should be a happily married couple back together again, moving forward with their original goals and purposes as a couple, or raising the family.
Right. But what happens here is not what happens. David Miscavige wants Mimi Rogers disconnected from Tom Cruise. The faster, the better. Now that he's got his hooks into Tom Cruise, right?
Right.
He doesn't. Phil Spickler. He doesn't want Phil Spickler having his hooks into him, which he really didn't have it, but he just wanted them broken up, right?
Well, Phil was the suppressive person, father-in-law, and Mimi, to try and save her marriage, actually disconnected from her dad. To try and save her marriage to Tom. However, Ray Midoff, as Inspector General Tech, working with the Inspector General Greg, were out to make sure that marriage didn't get back together, totally in violation of anything Scientology in relationship to a marriage.
Right.
And Ray, as Inspector General Tech, he was telling me he didn't like this, but he was having to do it.
Right.
And so you can't get the end results that way. So Mimi was basically shoved aside on purpose, and no marriage counseling was done to make that marriage work.
Right. And then she eventually just fell away from Scientology altogether. She no longer considers herself a Scientologist. And, Tom got what he wanted, which was Nicole Kidman. Dave got what he wanted, which is his bromance with Tom Cruise. And basically, anytime Tom Cruise needed anything, who's he call? His best buddy, David Miscavige. Whether that be, fixing up a vehicle or putting in a new audio equipment at his house, or doing whatever, you know what I mean? Dave was the guy to call. And of course, eventually, Tom and Nicole ended up getting divorced in 2000. And who does he have handle it? David Miscavige, and at that time, Marty Rathbun, who was Dave's right-hand man. And here's a picture of Tom Cruise and David Miscavige that was taken and given by, the photo was taken by Scientology and given to Los Angeles Times when they were doing an article about Scientology to show how close and buddy they were. They looked like two tough guys on a motorcycle, right? And, this just went on for time and time again. Here, these are motorcycles that a Sea Org member at the time, John Brousseau, he totally painted them and got them all tricked out for Tom and for David Miscavige. And that's in front of the Religious Technology Center building that was built after we left, at the property. But that's just an example. And that was all Scientology, Sea Organization labor at $50 a week, not, professional people. Now, they did a great job and they do great work, but it was completely contrary. Tom's family got free auditing at the Flag Land base. He got his mother in, his sister in, and all that. Right. Tom could afford it. He had millions and millions of dollars, but no, we got to keep people happy.
And also, those Sea Org members did not join the Sea Org in order to work on Tom Cruise's motorbikes or even to help anything in his household. They were supposed to be there to help expand Scientology.
That's exactly right. And of course, then, there's the stories everybody knows where Shelley Miscavige and David Miscavige worked to find Tom Cruise a suitable wife after Nicole Kidman. And then sure enough, they find Katie Holmes, right? And they get married in Italy. And then who's the best man at the wedding? Oh, who's that on the right? David Miscavige.
David Miscavige.
Next to Tom Cruise and Tom's son, Connor. Okay. That's how close these guys became, right? Meanwhile, Miscavige had staff members working for Tom Cruise as his personal staff, his maids, his cooks, his this and that. They were all Scientologists, and they reported up to Miscavige on a daily basis. What was Tom and Katie up to? What was Tom and Nicole up to? In other words, he knew exactly what was going on because he did what he did with Mary Sue Hubbard after L. Ron Hubbard died. He had staff monitoring what they were doing, so he knew everything they were doing. It was just a dirty spy.
Right.
Here's David Miscavige at Janis, did L. Ron Hubbard, did he hang out with celebrities and people like that on his spare time? And actually, did he even have much spare time?
No, he did not hang out with celebrities. The closest he got to one was Milton, as I already explained. Otherwise, he pretty much dedicated his time mostly to Scientology and his photography, which he tried to use his photography to make money off of doing marketing for Scientology. But it was all interconnected with Scientology. He didn't go skydiving, go out to dinner or movies, just to go to a movie. He just didn't hang out with those people. And if he did go talk to people, he hung out with his aides.
Right.
Sea Org members who were dedicated and working with him.
Right. All right. And then this, of course, brings us to the International Association of Scientologists event where David Miscavige had Tom Cruise awarded the Medal of Valor, which is like a hood ornament. And this is a picture of Tom Cruise saluting David Miscavige, right? Saying he's the leader of leaders, right? And there's Tom Cruise with his hood ornament of a medal, right?
And this is when Miscavige gave the greatest insult to all Sea Org members.
And Scientologists, really.
Yes.
Yep. He said Tom Cruise was the most dedicated Scientologist I know. Okay. And I wasn't even in the Sea Org or a Scientologist at that time, but I took it as an offense. And so did the Sea Org members that were in there because they signed the billion-year contract. They weren't making hundreds of millions of dollars on the movie sets and flying all over the world in private jets and living in mansions all over the world, right? They were working around the clock 7 days a week and had dedicated themselves to a billion years, right? And this guy's more dedicated as a Scientologist than the rest of them. That was a big joke. Big joke. Never like that, right? Okay, so here's what we got here. We have Tom Cruise and David Miscavige, buddies, right? And Janis, let me ask you, have you noticed anything about Tom Cruise over the years? Just in terms of watching him on television and like that. Are he and David Miscavige similar?
Yes, and you know what? In talking to various people that knew Tom, and in having watched the different movies with Tom, you could actually see Tom change from being a sweetheart of a guy to where he has a valence change, where what I mean by that is he's taken on the identity of someone else. He is not himself.
Right.
And that's where I'll watch the movies and I'm like, oh my God, that's like watching David Miscavige.
Exactly. Exactly. Yeah. And it's in Scientology, they have a term called valence, right? Like it's another personality. Like when you take on a personality of somebody else or a destructive personality that's not your own, correct?
Correct. Yes, it's the identity of another person.
And this is David Miscavige and Tom Cruise, buddies, right? All right, that's what we wanted to talk about today. I appreciate everybody watching our video, all right? I wanted to mention Janis has a book, okay? She has 2 books, actually. This is book 1. She worked with L. Ron Hubbard on a daily basis from the age of, 12, 13 years old?
12.
6 hours a day, 7 days a week for years, right? And that's your first book. Yes. And then this is a picture of book 2. She has 2 books out, and you can get them hardcover, and you can also get them, you can get them hardcover as well. You have the first book is audio as well, right?
Yeah, audio, and they're both soft cover. They're paperbacks. They're not hardcover.
Okay.
But yeah, they get printed on demand by Amazon. But I also want to mention our next video is going to be part 2 of the Commodore's Messengers. That's
right, Janis. And if you want to order those, there's links. You can go to Amazon.com. You can order those books and buy them. And there's also a link for the audio of book 1. So if you want to go on the description page, there are links to those. Okay. The other thing I wanted to mention, we would really appreciate it if you would subscribe to our channel. If you like this video, please click the like button. It helps us get these videos out to more people. And the other thing is, if you have any questions or want to make any comments, we will answer them, all right? And one thing I wanted to mention is tomorrow is Janis's birthday. I want to say happy birthday to you, Janis. And if you want to wish her a happy birthday, please make comments and tell her that.
And subscribe for me.
Exactly. That'd be a good gift, right?
Yes.
And then the other thing, too, I want to mention is we're going to do a live stream. We'll probably do a live stream here in the next couple of days where you can actually ask any questions you want, and we'll be happy to answer them. So anyway, I just wanted to say thank you all for watching. We really appreciate your viewership, and we hope to see you soon on our next video. Bye-bye, Janis.
Bye, Mark.